He was just a retired canine, until one cold night he barked at a garbage truck and changed everything. What they found inside wasn't trash, it was a newborn baby clinging to life. This is the story of a dog who refused to stop being a hero, a teen girl who no one believed, and the family they never saw coming. The town of Franklin, Indiana had seen quieter winters. This one felt heavier, snow that clung too long, streets emptied too early, and silence that pressed against windows like frost. On the outskirts, just past the county line, Officer Jake Nolan turned onto a dimly lit service road for his usual late-night patrol. His retired canine partner Diesel, a weathered German shepherd with silver streaks above his eyes, sat alert in the passenger seat, ears twitching. Jake wasn't supposed to be working. Not officially. After 20 years in the force and more battles than he liked to count, he'd taken a desk job 6 months ago. Paperwork, reports, silence. But old habits die hard. And Diesel, despite the limp in his back leg, still whined near the door when Jake put on the uniform. Tonight, the route was slow. Storefronts shuttered. The diner lights off. Just snow falling like confetti from a forgotten sky. Jake sipped lukewarm coffee and let the cruiser roll to a crawl past the industrial district. That's when Diesel shifted. He sat up straighter. Head turned. Ears locked forward. Jake glanced at him, eyebrows raised. "What is it, buddy?" A low growl rumbled from Diesel's throat. Jake followed his gaze. At the end of the service road, parked crooked beside an overflowing dumpster, was a battered green garbage truck. It shouldn't have been there. Pickup was Wednesdays. Tonight was Monday. Diesel barked. Once. Sharp. Urgent. Jake felt the hairs rise on his neck. He pulled the cruiser up behind the truck and stepped out. Diesel leapt down beside him, limping slightly but focused. The snow-muffled sound wrapped the world in cotton. All Jake could hear was Diesel's breathing, and then a noise. So faint he almost dismissed it. A whimper. It turned to Diesel. "Where?" Diesel darted to the back of the truck. The tailgate was halfway open, trash bags spilling out like grotesque confetti. The smell was unbearable, rot, oil, cold metal. Diesel stood rigid, nose in the air, then started digging into a pile near the corner. He barked again, frantic, insistent. Jake didn't wait. He pulled on his gloves and helped clear the bags. Then his hand touched something soft. Not a bag, a blanket. Wet, cold, but wrapped tightly. Inside, he found a tiny face, barely visible, mouth parted in a silent cry. Jake's breath caught. Oh my God. He dropped to his knees, unwrapping the layers as carefully as he could. A newborn, no more than a day old. Skin pale, lips slightly blue. But then movement. The baby's fingers twitched. He's alive. Diesel stood beside them, still and watchful. Jake called it in fast. Infant found, alive. I need EMS now. Within minutes, lights flashed. EMTs rushed the baby to the ambulance. Jake followed close, heart pounding. Diesel wouldn't leave the truck. He stayed planted beside the spot the baby had been, as if guarding something holy. Later that night, in the pediatric ICU at St. Mary's Hospital, Jake sat by the nursery window watching through the glass. The baby, now cleaned and swaddled in hospital white, lay under a gentle heating lamp. Tubes ran from his tiny wrists, and a monitor beeped steadily. A nurse had written "Baby Doe" on the nameplate. Jake couldn't stop staring. He wouldn't have made it another hour, the doctor had said. The cold. The exposure. He was hypothermic, barely clinging. Whoever left him there didn't want him found. But Diesel had. Somehow, through scent, instinct, or something deeper, Diesel had known. By 3 a.m., Jake returned to the station, exhausted but restless. He sat in the locker room, Diesel curled at his feet. He stared at the floor for a long time. Then he whispered, "You saved him, didn't you?" Diesel exhaled and rested his head on Jake's boot. The next morning, the news hit the local airwaves. Abandoned newborn found alive in trash compactor, saved by retired police dog. Calls flooded the station. Some with outrage. others with prayers. One call stood out, a shaky voice from a blocked number. "I just wanted to know, is the baby okay?" A girl's voice. Young. Frightened. Then she hung up. Jake played the voicemail back 6 times. The voice chilled him, not because of fear, but because of something else. Regret. He asked the tech team to trace it. No luck. Burner phone. Disposable. But his gut told him something. The mother wasn't gone. She was watching. That night, Jake drove back to the service road. Diesel sat quietly beside him, head tilted toward the spot they'd found the baby. "Someone left him there," Jake muttered, but not because they didn't care. That call, she wanted to know if he was okay. A call if you didn't care. Diesel didn't move. Jake stepped out. Snow was falling again. Light. Gentle. The garbage truck was gone now, towed and impounded, but the memory lingered. He stared at the ground where Diesel had barked. Then slowly he noticed something else. Footprints, smaller than his, leading away from the alley down toward the bus stop, almost faded now under new snow. But they were there. He knelt, touching one with gloved fingers. "You were here," he whispered. "You walked away. He didn't sleep that night." He stayed at the station, reading missing persons reports, hospital logs, social service complaints. He had to find her. The girl who walked away. The girl who left her baby in the cold, but made sure someone might hear him cry. And Diesel once more didn't leave his side. 3 days passed. Snow continued to fall, stubborn and soft. Inside, Mary's baby dough was improving. His color had returned. He was feeding, squirming, responding to touch. Nurses began calling him Little Fighter. Jake visited twice a day, sitting silently beside the nursery window. Diesel waited outside the ward, tail thumping each time Jake came back. Jake's mind wasn't on patrol anymore. It was on the voice. The voicemail. That soft, trembling whisper that asked if the baby was okay. He couldn't shake it. Somewhere in this town, a girl was carrying the weight of a decision no one her age should have to make, and she was alone. The tech team still couldn't trace the call, but Jake had other ideas. He started at the local high schools, cross-referencing absentee students, nurse visits, sudden disappearances. He drove by shelters, soup kitchens, abandoned houses. On a hunch, he checked the CCTV from the bus depot near the alley where the baby was found. There, time-stamped 4:07 a.m., a figure appeared. A girl, maybe 15 or 16, thin frame wrapped in a coat too big, hood drawn tight. She stepped off the bus, stood frozen for a moment, then walked down the service road. Jake leaned in. She was carrying something. A bundle. Small. Cradled tight. He froze the frame. Zoomed in. It was grainy, but his gut clenched. It was her. The girl who left the baby. The girl who called. He printed the image and pinned it on the board back at the station. "We'll find her," Lana said beside him. "But gently, Jake. She's not a criminal. She's scared." Jake nodded. "I know. That's why Diesel's coming with me." That night, they canvassed the blocks around the depot. Diesel sniffed and paused at every alley. At a boarded-up building near Grant and Maple, he whined and scratched the door. Jake followed, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Inside, old mattresses, fast food wrappers, a pile of blankets in the corner. And someone moved. Jake lowered his light. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." A girl peeked up, eyes wide. The same from the footage. Pale, exhausted, trembling. She clutched an old blanket to her chest like armor. Diesel didn't growl. He walked forward slowly and laid down at her feet. Jake knelt. "You called about the baby, didn't you?" She said nothing. Jake continued. "He's alive. He's okay. You saved him." The girl burst into tears. Her name was Malign. She was 15. She'd run away from her foster home 3 months earlier. Said her foster father told her if she kept the baby, she'd be arrested. Said no one wanted girls like her to be mothers. So she hid her pregnancy, delivered the baby alone in an abandoned clinic room she'd broken into, wrapped him in blankets, placed him near the garbage truck, praying anyone might hear his cry. She stayed nearby, watching, waiting, until Diesel barked. Jake radioed CPS. Lauren Brandt responded personally. In the hospital room later that night, Melaine stood beside the crib. She looked like she might collapse, but her hand reached out and Baby Doe wrapped his fingers around hers. Melaine wept. Jake stood back, watching. Diesel sat beside him, tail still, eyes soft. "He's beautiful," Melaine whispered. "You gave him a chance," Jake said gently. "I named him," she said after a moment. "It means gift." Jake nodded. "It fits." She turned to him, eyes shining with something halfway between fear and hope. "Can I see him again tomorrow?" Jake didn't hesitate. "We'll make sure you do." The following morning, Milan was moved to a temporary youth shelter under emergency protection. CPS opened an investigation into her foster home. Jake gave his full report, but it didn't feel like enough. That night, he found himself staring at old photos of Diesel during his military days. The dog who had once pulled men from fire and sniffed out explosives had now saved something even more fragile, a newborn boy. A silent cry. A broken girl. "You never stop, do you?" Jake murmured, scratching behind Diesel's ears. The dog leaned into him, eyes heavy with meaning. A day later, things changed again. Security at the hospital logged a visitor asking for Melaine, no ID. Refused to leave a name. Male, late 50s, said he was family. Jake saw the footage. His stomach turned. Charles McKinley, Melaine's former foster father. Jake slammed his palm on the desk. "He knows she talked." "We have to move her," Lauren said. "Tonight." By nightfall, Melaine and Theo were in a secure group home with 24-hour surveillance. Jake drove by twice that night. Diesel watched from the front seat, every muscle tense. Jake didn't go home. He parked outside the shelter all night. At 3:14 a.m., Diesel's ears perked. A shadow moved behind the trees across the street. Jake stepped out slowly. The figure ducked into the dark. Gone. Jake didn't sleep. He filed for additional protection detail. He wasn't just a cop now. He was something else. A guardian. A promise. Later that day, he met Melaine at the shelter. Her face was pale again. He said, "If I ever told anyone, he'd take the baby." Jake's jaw tightened. He said Theo wasn't mine. That I didn't deserve him. That I'd disappear. Jake knelt beside her. "You're not disappearing. You're not going anywhere." She looked at him, eyes hollow. "He'll come. I know he will." Jake looked down at Diesel. The dog was already watching the window. And for the first time in years, Jake felt it again, not fear, but resolve. Because some cries never fade. And this time, he was listening. Jake wasn't a stranger to fear. He'd worn it in desert heat, heard it in the cries of wounded men, felt it in the quiet before bombs detonated. But this fear, it was different. It wasn't the kind that made your heart race. It was heavier, slower. It crept in like fog, soaking into the bones. And it was the kind he saw now in Melaine's eyes every time the wind rustled a tree outside her shelter window. "Still no trace of McKinley," Lana said as she stepped beside Jake outside the youth shelter the next morning. Her voice was low, clipped. "No credit card activity, no cell signals. He's gone to ground." Jake watched Diesel sniff the air, ears alert, tail low. "No," Jake said quietly. "He's not gone. He's waiting." "Then what do we do?" Jake didn't answer at first. His eyes were locked on the frosted window above, the one in Melaine's room. A shadow moved behind it, and for a second, Jake's breath caught. Theo. He was in her arms. His tiny hand curled into the neckline of her shirt, his cheeks full and pink now, the gauntness of those early days finally fading. The baby she had nearly lost, the baby she had saved. "We stay ahead of him," Jake finally said. "We keep her safe." Patrol cars passed the shelter every 30 minutes. Lights were installed in the back alley. Officers posed as maintenance workers during the day to monitor any suspicious vehicles. Lauren Brandt arranged a trauma counselor for Meline, and every day Jake showed up. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes just to be near. Diesel, too. Always Diesel. At first, Melaine didn't say much. She'd sit on the porch, swing out back, her knees pulled up to her chest, eyes scanning rooftops. But one afternoon, she broke the silence. He used to stand outside my door at night. Jake didn't speak. He just waited. I'd hear him breathing, not doing anything, just standing there, like he was waiting for something. Her voice cracked. Jake's grip on the porch railing tightened until his knuckles turned white. And then when I found out I was pregnant, he said it was proof I was trash. That no one would believe me. Jake turned to her. You were a child. She shook her head. He made me believe I was nothing. Diesel nudged her leg gently. She reached down and scratched behind his ears. I never had anyone stick around, she whispered. Not even my mom. But this dog, he doesn't even talk, and I feel safer around him than I ever did with people. Jake looked down at his partner. He's always known who needs him most. That night, Jake couldn't sleep again. He sat on the porch, sipping coffee gone cold, Diesel at his feet. Around 2:41 a.m., a call came in. Suspicious individual near a gas station off Route 14. Jake responded instantly. Footage showed a man in a dark coat buying a burner phone and whiskey. No name, no conversation. But the clerk remembered his eyes. Said they were the kind that look through you, not at you. Jake didn't need a name. He knew who it was. McKinley. Back at the precinct, Jake and Lana huddled over maps. He's circling, Lana said, testing our blind spots. Jake pointed to 3 locations, the alley, the shelter, and now the gas station. He's creating a triangle. He's watching us, waiting for an opening. Jake didn't wait for orders. He called in a favor from an old contact at Child Protective Services. I'm not saying I want to adopt her, Jake told the director. Not yet. I'm saying if there's no one else, she's not going back. Not to the system. Not to anyone like him. The director was silent a moment. You sure about this, Jake? This is more than temporary placement. Jake looked down at Diesel, who stared back like he already knew. I've made harder decisions with less time. That evening, Jake went to the shelter early. Melaine was in the art room sketching, soft charcoal strokes across the paper. Her drawing showed Diesel under a full moon, Theo curled against his side. The caption beneath read, Protector. Jake smiled. That's a good one. She blushed slightly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. I draw because it makes things feel quiet. He nodded, then sat across from her. I have something to tell you, he said. It's not official yet, but there's a chance you and Theo might come stay with me. Temporarily. Just until things are safer. Her pencil paused mid-stroke. Are you serious? Jake nodded. But why? He took a breath. Because you didn't give up. Because Theo's got your eyes. Because Diesel picked you. And because I don't think you should have to keep doing this alone. Tears filled her eyes. No one's ever said that to me before. He gave a small smile. Then it's about time someone did. By the next morning, placement was approved. Jake's house was small. Quiet. The walls were lined with old books, soft blankets, and photos from Diesel's service days. He cleared the guest room, set up a crib, and pulled out old baby clothes from a neighbor's donation. Diesel never left Melaine's side. She walked from room to room slowly, like it wasn't real. You okay? Jake asked gently. She nodded. Yeah, just, it feels warm. That evening, as she held Theo in the nursery, Diesel lay curled at her feet. Jake stood in the doorway, watching. I didn't think I'd ever be in a place like this again, Melaine said. You're safe now, Jake told her. She looked up. But what if he comes? Jake's voice was quiet but firm. Then he'll find out what happens when a man tries to harm someone under this roof. Diesel lifted his head. And in the glow of the nightlight, in that tiny room filled with baby breaths and old fears, Jake made a silent vow. They wouldn't just survive. They'd live. Because some homes aren't built with walls. They're built with courage. Snow dusted the porch railing as Jake sat with a mug of reheated coffee. The steam rose in gentle spirals, but his eyes stayed sharp, fixed on the shadows across the street. Diesel lay by the door, head up, ears perked. Inside, Malign was giving Theo a warm bottle. The boy's tiny feet kicked softly under his blanket. The house smelled like cinnamon toast and baby powder. But peace, Jake knew, was always temporary when danger waited just beyond the light. At 3:09 a.m., the radio crackled. Unit 3, we've got a 10 to 96. Male, 50s, loitering 1 block south of the women's shelter. No contact, just watching. Jake dropped the mug, grabbed his vest, and tapped Diesel twice on the side. Let's go. They reached the location in under 5 minutes. Lana was already on scene, flashlight out, scanning the alley behind the closed bakery. Footprints, she muttered. Fresh. They followed them around a dumpster, where a motion sensor camera was mounted. Back at the cruiser, Jake played the footage. There he was. McKinley. Standing across the street, hood pulled up, cigarette glowing in the dark. He didn't move, just stared through the shelter windows. And like smoke, he disappeared again. Jake clenched his jaw. He's circling, waiting for the system to blink. Lana didn't argue. We need a permanent solution. Back home, Jake checked every door and window, even the attic hatch. Diesel followed, tail stiff, nose working overtime. The next day, CPS sent a team to evaluate the house officially. Theo passed his medical checks. Malign showed them her GED coursework, even shared her drawings. One of the caseworkers lingered on the sketch of Diesel and Theo labeled home. Jake stood by the hallway, quiet, arms crossed. After they left, Malign sat down on the couch, looking exhausted but lighter. Do you think I can do this? She asked quietly. Jake knelt by the coffee table, facing her. I think you already are. She looked down at Theo, who was gurgling in his sleep. I still wake up at 3 a.m. Sometimes I feel like I'm still there, in the alley with the trash bin. Like I never really left it. Jake reached for one of her drawings on the table. It was rough, incomplete. Just a sidewalk, a dumpster, and a dog silhouette tail up, mid-bark. But you did leave it, Jake said. And you didn't leave alone. She nodded slowly. That night, something changed. At exactly 3:17 a.m., Diesel stood up in the dark, growled once, and trotted to the front window. Jake, already awake, moved to the side quietly. In the street, someone walked, fast, hunched, watching the house. Jake's phone buzzed. Lana. Gas station 2 miles out reported a man matching McKinley's description, asking if they'd seen a girl with a baby. Jake looked down the street. He's close. Diesel's ears were forward, whole body tense. 2 nights later, the inevitable happened. The shelter's rear motion camera triggered again. This time, the footage showed McKinley walking directly toward the back fence. He tried the gate. It was locked. He turned, looked up at the window. Then he took out a marker and scrawled something on the alley wall. You think you saved her? Jake watched the footage on repeat at the station. His blood boiled. You're right, he said aloud. We didn't save her. She saved herself. But the threat was now undeniable. Jake made his decision. He moved a cot into Theo's room. Diesel curled up beneath it, tail over his nose, one eye always open. He installed new locks, motion lights, and a security camera out front. And he kept one loaded weapon in the drawer under the crib. Just in case. Then came the snowstorm. Blinding flurries. Temperatures dropping fast. Roads closing. The town slowed to a crawl. Jake was stuck at home, but he wasn't alone. He and Malign shoveled the driveway in shifts. Inside, Theo played with a crinkly lion toy while Diesel monitored every sound like he was back on patrol. One afternoon, Malign came to the kitchen while Jake was fixing a squeaky cabinet. You think people can really change? She asked. Jake wiped his hands on a towel. I think most people don't want to, but some fight like hell to. She looked out the frosted window. I want Theo to know that he wasn't thrown away, that he mattered, that someone cared. He will, Jake said, because he has you. And you. Jake looked surprised. I'm just the guy who heard a bark. She smiled. Sometimes that's enough. The following week, the town council called. They were planning a ceremony for first responders. They wanted to honor Diesel. Jake hesitated. He's retired, he said. Retired or not, the mayor replied, his bark saved a life. The ceremony took place in the center of town. Old buildings framed the square, the air crisp with late winter breath. A small stage was set. First responders lined up in uniform. Then came Diesel's turn. The mayor told the story. About the bark, the garbage truck, the newborn, the silent girl who'd lived through something no one should, and the dog who heard what the world didn't. Malene stood beside Jake, holding Theo wrapped in a yellow blanket. When the applause came, it wasn't just for Diesel. It was for everything he'd done, without ever saying a word. Jake knelt beside him. He never quit, he said, and he never will. Back at home, Diesel got a new collar. Polished silver tag. It read, Diesel Protector. That night, as they sat on the porch, sunset melting over the snow, Meline rocked Theo in her arms. Jake sipped hot cocoa. You still think we're just temporary? She asked. Jake looked around. At the dog curled beneath the swing. At the baby dozing on her chest. At the porch light glowing warm against the dark. I think some homes are built slowly, he said, one cry at a time. One bark, one promise kept. And under the stars, for the first time in a long time, Malene didn't feel disposable. She felt real, held, wanted, alive. Spring broke slowly over Franklin, Indiana. Trees bloomed in hesitant pinks, patches of green poked through muddy lawns, and the last of the ice melted from gutters. But inside Jake's house, change was already in full motion. Theo was nearly 3 months old now. He'd begun smiling, not just the fluttery, half-dream kind, but full, focused grins that stopped time. His tiny fingers wrapped around Jake's thumb with surprising strength, and when Meline sang to him, his eyes followed her voice across the room. Jake stood one morning at the sink, shaving cream on his jaw, toothbrush clamped between his teeth, when he caught himself humming the same lullaby. Diesel, sprawled under the kitchen table, opened one eye and gave a look like, really, boss? Life had taken on a rhythm. Morning feedings, online classes, porch repairs, night patrols, both of the house and Jake's thoughts. But under all of it, something real had settled in the walls. A kind of warmth. The kind only found where safety lives. Still, McKinley's trial loomed. Jake was at the courthouse with Meline on the first hearing date. She wore a plain navy dress and held Theo close to her chest. He'd fallen asleep in the wrap she'd learned to tie after watching online tutorials late into the night. The courtroom was silent when McKinley was brought in. Cuffed. Hollow-eyed. Still defiant. Meline didn't flinch. Jake watched her, not the defendant. She didn't look like a scared teen anymore. She looked like a survivor. Like someone who'd made it through the fire and come out carrying something more precious than fear. Theo stirred once as McKinley's lawyer tried to argue character. But the judge wasn't interested. The evidence was thick. The testimonies clearer than any camera. The prosecutor read a final statement that Meline had written the night before. You said I wasn't a person. You said I was a problem. But you were wrong. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am someone who listened to a dog's bark and decided to live. The courtroom went still. And then the gavel fell. McKinley was remanded for sentencing. No bail. As they exited the courthouse, Jake held the door while Meline stepped into the sunlight. It's over, she whispered. Jake shook his head gently. No. It's just beginning. She smiled. And this time, it reached her eyes. Back home, CPS filed the paperwork for extended kinship placement. Jake passed every background check, home visit, and character evaluation. Even Lana wrote a glowing recommendation. You might not have planned for this, she told Jake, but sometimes the right family doesn't look like a plan. It looks like a porch light left on, a dog that won't give up, a man who shows up. The official letter arrived on a Tuesday. Jake unfolded it at the kitchen table while Diesel munched quietly on a peanut butter biscuit beside him. Approved kinship foster placement of Melene J. and infant son, Theo J. Jake exhaled slowly. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked over at the fridge where Diesel's framed drawing still hung. Guess this is home now, he said softly. Melene found the letter later and didn't cry, not in the way she once did. She pressed it gently into Theo's baby book, between a lock of his hair and the hospital bracelet. One night, after Theo fell asleep, she walked onto the porch where Jake sat repairing a torn screen. Do you ever think about how this all started, she asked. Jake looked up. A bark, he said. Just a bark. But it wasn't just that. She sat beside him, knees pulled up. I could have stayed hiding. I could have kept pretending. But he wouldn't let me. Jake nodded toward Diesel, who was dozing nearby, paws twitching in a dream. He knew you weren't okay, Jake said, before either of us did. Melene looked out at the stars. Sometimes I wonder how he knew. What made him stop? Jake smiled faintly. Because he's not just trained to find danger. He's wired to find what matters. Silence sat with them like an old friend. Then Jake spoke again, slower. Some people, they break things. But some fix them. And Diesel? He listens for the cracks. That weekend, the community center held a family day in the town square. Booths lined the sidewalks. Kids played beanbag toss. Someone strummed a guitar under the gazebo. Melene brought Theo in a stroller. Jake pushed. Diesel wore a vest that said retired, but still watching in bright orange letters. People stopped to greet them, officers, neighbors, even a few who had once walked past Melene without seeing her. Now they smiled, asked about the baby, gave her space, gave her dignity. An old man came up and knelt beside Diesel. Is the dog from the garbage truck? He asked. Jake nodded. The man patted Diesel's head. Good boy, he whispered. And Diesel, old as he was, lifted his chin like a soldier being saluted. Later, as dusk fell and the crowds thinned, Melene looked at Jake. You know, she said, that alley, it's gone now. They tore it down. Built a food pantry in its place. Jake looked surprised. Really? She nodded. First day it opened, I dropped off a bag of formula and 2 cans of beans. Jake chuckled. That's what starting over looks like. No, Melene said. That's what healing looks like. As the sun slipped low, Theo gurgled in the stroller, reaching for Diesel's wagging tail. The old shepherd turned his head, licked the baby's hand once, and settled again. No alarms. No danger. Just peace. And the hum of a town that had remembered what it meant to listen. Back home that night, Melene tucked Theo into his crib, then paused at the doorway. Jake stood in the hall, arms crossed. You're doing good, he said. She nodded. So are you. He smiled, stepped back into the living room. Diesel was already curled by the fire. Jake dropped into the armchair, legs sore, back stiff. But his heart, full. And just before he drifted off, Diesel let out one small bark. Not loud, not urgent, just enough to say, we're home.